We can use this time to introduce ourselves. So my name is Ieva Ḥawwāh. I'm coming from Pompeu Fabra University. At the end of the presentation, I'm giving the contact details in Barcelona. Anyone who knows where the university is? Barcelona? Yeah, it's close to the Vatican. It's close to this big, small park. So it's just behind it. Something close to the city center. Welcome also. And if I'm interested, I'm in the humanities department. And it's not social sciences, but different topic today. I don't know what's the plan today. Should we just go for a presentation?
Oh, yeah, and thank you for being here. It's lecture. It's our first research meeting of this semester. So we are first get our meetings closed.
Good. So breaking of the opening them. See that the building is being renewed, which is also very nice. So people looking. I know, can I have the knowledge who you are? We would like to be familiar with the audience.
Part of the department of sociology and
okay, that's why.
I have to admit, so far I have some prejudice against autoethnography.
Yeah, well, this is something that I was going to use that but it's something very new that I'm trying. So maybe you know more about it than myself because I'm kind of new and actually I'm doing cultural gerontology and literary gerontology. So just trying out new waters. Well, thank you. So maybe we can have a discussion afterwards.
Yeah, I'm going to try to have more on the quantitative side of the department. I'm interested in education and I'm interested in intergenerational exchange. So this is something that touches upon your topic to some extent.
Yeah, it's gender, ethnography, intergenerational. Okay, now I understand why we're here. Like, no, okay. Maybe afterwards we can have this.
But she's part of my team.
Okay.
That's the part of it. That's someone to be. My name is Ieva Ḥawwāh. I'm also a good part of it already. And I work in social gerontology. And I have to, I was going to say that on his behalf himself, but he said he needed to Google the gerontology term. So I'm looking forward to explain all our concepts to us.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
My name is Badatelském. I'm from the arts. Okay. Apart from here, I'm from the Department of Education Sciences. My goal is education. My interest includes biotechnology, product learning, and also writing.
Great, so we have similar interests too, and also interdisciplinary stuff. You never know what kind of collaborations might come up.
As you recall, I'm
not late, we just
present and I'm presenting in the research and oriented research.
Well, I think study will lead around the department of educational sciences and during research, maybe workplace learning, expensive workplace learning. I'm also interested in education skills.
So to know that I was thinking this is also something new for me. I just started looking at age graded universities from age study perspective. So this is developed from like an experimental thing that they did. So we have some more experts than me, which is presented what they found interesting and yes, because they have some interesting discussions after all. Any questions beforehand, or should we jump into this presentation? Okay, good, fantastic. So yeah, the chair goes up anyways. That's fine. Mainly it was like a short presentation of a paper that I've already published. I will show it at the end. So just like a little bit of a summary, giving the main points and ideas about it. And as you will see, it's based as on age perspective. So when we know that, can you hear me well? Should I speak up? A little bit or more? Yeah, because of the noise. Yeah. So as we know that with an increasing number of aging individuals on a global scale, formal and non-formal education programs have become more integral and also more popular. And also we have senior courses at your university. Well, if we close, but let's see. Yeah, well, maybe should we open the window or it's gonna be the same because if it's so hot. Yeah. No, it's okay. I'll try to speak up. Yeah, no worry. So, yeah, no problem. So just I was introducing like the senior courses, lifelong learning education, adult education has become much more popular now because of the longevity, as we know, of increasing number of aging individuals. And and the World Health Organization policy on active aging included lifelong learning as the fourth pillar, therefore complementing the previous ones, namely health, security, and participation. And as educational gerontologist, perhaps some of you know him, Marvin Formosa, he says that lifelong learning constitutes one of the pillars of active aging on the basis that learning reinforces well-being and a sense of quality of life, and also helps people to stay engaged and healthier, and at the same time also helps to combat social isolation, cognitive impairment, and all discrimination. So we see that while people, going to these courses, they become more engaged. It's also kind of for some people like a social club. So the management and teaching and learning for all the people is referred to as gerogogy, right? So it's been a new term for me, but this term is also interchangeably used with educational gerontology. So it's more or less the same, gerogogy, which looks like a Porsche term, and also educational gerontology. However, while there is a lot of research done in adult education, especially in terms of active aging and healthy aging, and also cognitive impairment, and especially from a social sciences perspective, there is, I see a little bit of a lack of investigation of different qualitative methods that could help us better understand the complexities of aging and also complexities of learning and how our older adults approach, learning in later life. So that's why today I want to address this qualitative methodological approach, which is autoethnography. Because I see it as a complementary and also alternative way to understand adult education. And autoethnography is broadly expanding. However, it is still little legitimized approach. And here in this short presentation today, I would like to see how it can be used as an ageism intervention. Of course, during the lunch, we discussed that different ways of using of autoethnography. Perhaps we can talk about it after the presentation. So mainly specifically in this presentation, I want to focus on this as how to combat aging, how to understand it, and also how to deal with ageism and also different discrimination based on gender and on age in education. So as I told you before, my presentation is not based on a specific case study, or I just rather attempts to give more visibility to autoethnography and also demonstrate how alternative ways of studying adult education can lead us also to better understanding of complexities of aging, and also this understand and foster better perhaps the relationship between students and teachers. Kind of, this critical insider views, right? So just quickly, as we know, ethnography, and here we have an expert in ethnography. So it's a method in which a researcher during an extended period of time employs interaction, field notes, and different artifacts to examine a social group or a cultural phenomenon, right? So while all ethnography, a researcher writes about a group of people, Autoethnographers, as it says, the word says, actually write about themselves in relation to different cultural differences or phenomena. So in a sense, it is a method that combines autobiographical narrative and storytelling with ethnographical inquiry, right? So it's like a mix. So it's a way for individuals to explore and to reflect upon their personal experiences and also their relationship to cultural background in more scholarly and academic way. And I see that autoethnography is, of course, interdisciplinary and also helps to blur the lines between more traditional disciplines like sociology, education, gerontology, and also related to narrative inquiry. Autoethnographers, Hugh and Pennington, very famous ethnographers, they say that it's learning more about a subject that you knew presumably well, which is yourself, and how you position yourself in an outsider world. So the use of autoethnography can also have bridge the gap between literary and scientific writing, and also blur established categories, right? And deviate, as I said before, from more traditional, more established, hardcore disciplines and research. So this is like a little map where to situate autoethnography. We see we're talking about narrative inquiry genres. So we have biographical writing, which is life stories, Bildungsroman. We also have arts-based narrative inquiry. Perhaps it will resonate with people coming from educational department today. And so also biographical writing falls into this category of narrative inquiry, more or less. So that we're to see where to situate it. And also another ethnographer says that actually ethnography is itself like a narrative approach. A leading scholar in narrative gerontology, William Randall, regards people as hermeneutical beings, as people who are makers of meaning. That's why he says that stories that we tell are also very important and also help us to understand things that cannot be measured by data alone. So in a sense, autoethnography can be said kind of to humanize research in a sense and make a person a subject rather than the object of study, whose personal story does matter. So autoethnography has also taken root in international research in different areas, such as sociology, education, with a special focus on injustice and discrimination that is occurring in different spheres and educational contexts. For example, when I was researching for this paper, I found lots of interesting studies that use autoethnography to challenge unequal relationships, to challenge discriminatory practices, and also show how personal narratives can help us to know the stories that are being underrepresented or misinterpreted, and also counteract a little bit like racism or sexism, and also improve educational experiences. So it also can help address ageist practices as we give more focus on personal experiences, and also it helps to talk about more everyday occurrences and mundane settings and conversations that, as we know, are very difficult to document in more traditional studies. As another autoethnographer, Adam, says that autoethnographers can write about experiences that happen in private contexts, such as the bedroom or the bathroom, everything interactions when others make offensive comments, or internal feelings of dissonance or confusion. So it helps us to get like more insider views, as we said, something that sometimes are very important but are disregarded or not taken into account, and they are important. So, and also a little bit it relates to the subjugated knowledges. We know this term used by Michel Foucault, right? That he refers to these disqualified truths that are held by minorities and marginalized subjects, and because they don't kind of, relate to this hegemonic truths or erudite knowledges, it also helps to speak out from their margins, people who perhaps are not taken into account because they are coming from socially excluded groups or discriminated upon. So it also helps to challenge these truths. So a little bit about ageism, which is like a main topic of, yeah, you can open perhaps the door. Yeah, very hot. Thank you. So as we know, despite the increasing visibility of older adults, prejudices that affect older people continue to exist, even if there is more people, even each time we acknowledge ageism.
So this kind of the fear of graying population, also called silver tsunami, are shown in various media and also in social networks, in popular culture. So aging, and especially the cognitive decline, right? We talk about dementia, are now considered the biggest fears of aging. Sometimes we're not so much afraid of fear of aging, but about losing our mind, about losing our rationality. So the fear of aging and ageism are not only perpetuated by younger people, but also internalized by older people themselves. That can also lead to self-internalized ages and also think that we are not valid enough, we are not good enough, we cannot participate fully in society. So another age scholar, Paul Hicks, explains that we often tend to judge the worth and value of people based on how and what they contribute to society. And those who do not add to the so-called societal betterment are actually deemed to be not full members of society. And this is what he says, like, so be nice to your kids because we're going to choose your nursing home. So even if it's a joke, actually it carries very important cultural, sociological vision of aging. And as we know that these popular, successful, positive, active, healthy, good aging movements have done actually little to eradicate ageism and also this negative portrayal of old age. And some scholars state that they have softened the hidden truths by disseminating the idea of this happy, beautiful age, by shifting the tone, but not the facts. Additionally, they also downplay more the diversity of individual experiences that cannot be measured by data. That's why autoethnography can help us understand things that are happening in private sectors. So when applied to gerontology or educational gerontology, autoethnography can help us understand better ages and also lead to questions such as, for example, if you like, how ageism is experienced in adult education, how it can be challenged over time, how personal experiences, stories, and narratives of researchers and those who are being researched can help improve the quality of life and also lifelong learning perspectives of older adults, and also how better knowledge and of aging can help ameliorate and improve the quality of teaching of older students. For instance, there was a very interesting study of Lee, Corner, and Davis. Their research reveals how introducing autoethnographical writing as part of an ageism intervention encouraged younger students to familiarize themselves better with the older relatives. The aim of the study was to use autoethnography as a narrative gerontological research approach in conducting oral history with the grandparents or older people, and the participants gained great appreciation of this intergenerational relationships and knowledge. And also after the study, we had more motivation to get to know more about it and to establish closer relationships, to go and visit them more frequently, and also get more interested in a family history. So just one of examples of using autoethnography to foster better, deeper intergenerational relationships. And also acknowledging learners' voices can greatly contribute to the practice of critical gerontology, especially take into account that, as Martin Formosa says, that learners may know more about the subject than the facilitator, the educator, the teacher, especially when focusing on age discrimination. That's why it's also important to listen to their voices, how we are experiencing the courses that we are providing them with. So these aspects are especially important to take into account that older people are also very often marginalized in theoretical contexts and also empirical research concerning lifelong learning, the preparation of problems that we are preparing for them. So because the decisions, as we know, are very often being made for older people without taking into account their own voices, what they want, what their concerns are. So that's why it's more important to also take into account their needs. As again, Formosa says that older people, as you can read here, as a group are of oppressed class due to age's national policies and social practices that discriminate against them because we are old, just as racism and sexism achieves this as a result of skin color gender. And this is witnessed by the fact that politicians and professionals, as I said before, are constantly telling, what is better for them without taking their voice into account. Also, in order to comply with a prescribed research methodology and practice, many educators may miss out important aspects that could be beneficial to improve research, learning, dissemination, teaching, and also the quality of education in general. As autoethnographers Hughes and Pennington state, researcher voices have long been absent from a genealogical field, where the study of teaching is often integrated into the profession of teaching. Understanding how educators comprehend and recognize themselves as a subject, right, from this autoethnographical perspective. And educational context allows another perspective, this perspective that is very much hidden, this insider perspective. And it can also help to improve the curriculum. So by questioning ourselves and our performances, what we do from these autoethnographical lens, we also question our values, our belief systems, our practices, our cultural differences. And as another ethnographer says, and I'm quoting, engaging in the process of self-reflection and self-critique with an eye towards self-improvement can positively impact our work as educators and researchers and provide a foundation from which we work to foster equity, teaching, and also quality of lifelong learning. So in effect, in as much as our culture and society influence the field of education, education also mirrors society and cultural practices, so which can be deconstructed and reconstructed. So it's like a two-way bidirectional, right, flow, right? What we see and also what we see that also reproduce. Autoethnography is also relevant, and as you could see in this presentation, in addressing gender and power relationships, especially when we're talking about discrimination. For example, even if, as we know, all the women make up the majority of learners in those senior courses, and they are more active participants in social life, their voices very much remain unheard, and these exclusionary terms are very much referred to as a social problem in general, right? We all take into account gender and age. So to sum up, personal stories can benefit the field of gerogogy to improve teaching, quality of life, and fine-tuning adult education and teaching strategies can also help us improve the experience of learning for those who are learning, for us as researchers, as teachers, and also older individuals, especially those whose voices are unheard, underrepresented, socially marginalized people. And the use of autoethnography can also, in a sense, help us to understand aging and growing older, as Margaret Wetter says, which is like one of the most mysterious phases in existence. So the more different approaches we have to different phenomena, the richer our study becomes. So before finishing, I would like to address some limitations, because I think this is something that we already kind of talked about at the beginning of presentation. Of course, there are limitations with every single study. And since autoethnography is still little legitimized and still needs to pave its way to be like recognized as a valid methodological research. So of course, mainly it is criticized by falling short of the rigorous academic standards. And we say that there is no much substance because we're talking about something personal. It's not clear enough regarding the scientific boundaries, and also it's being criticized for being not enough academically valid field. The researcher is not an authoritative scientist who discovers knowledge, but rather becomes a figure through whom the narrative structure is expressed and also interpreted. It's also very subjective, of course, and they say that it's very different from other forms of qualitative research. It can also uncover certain aspects that can cause impression, or sometimes some aspects can be omitted, so perhaps we don't get the full picture of a story. There might also be a fear of losing personal power by revealing one's own personal story, which may contribute to the stories being unnoticed or unheard. It can also make it difficult for researchers to maintain this kind of a distance, scholarly distance, because after all, we're talking about our own experiences. It might also be risky in a sense, because it might cause some, depending on the story, what you're expressing, it may cause some harsh personal scholarly judgments, or may even lead to denigration of one's academic career. It can also be dangerous because it might be narcissistic, very perhaps too evocative, too emotional, self-indulgent, and maybe focus so much on the researcher. And there must also be a fear of telling personal stories that can be used against somebody or yourself, right? Or maybe some narratives that can hurt others, depending on what we're telling. And other researchers also say that it can be, in a sense, voyeuristic, especially bearing in mind that, and I quote from Ellis and Bocha, which are scholars in autoethnography, that personal stories indulge our culture's perverse curiosity about the private. And finally, of course, we are very complex and sometimes very difficult to understand, and also, just to step back from our personal narratives. So since we have limitations, we also have to take into account how to mitigate them, what we can do to deal with these risks. So it's important, according to autoethnographers, that, these are counter-arguments that don't necessarily invalidate the use of autoethnography, but rather, knowing the limitations, we can already start addressing, how to deal our research so that we don't fall into these limitations. And the possibilities that we have with autoethnography, apart from the ones that I more or less explained. So they say that it's very different from other research fields. Well, actually, it's not intended to be exactly the same, right? So, I mean, we have different perspectives. So that's why our research becomes richer. It also allows different ways to engage with this methodology, right? Depending on the subject, on what we're going to talk about, on lived experiences. It is interdisciplinary, as it combines different subjects. For example, in education field, we have social sciences, narrative inquiry, literature, sociology, education. It can also add to our qualitative research, right? And give us alternative tools to have a different vision of our research subject. So in a sense, it complements and humanizes research and social sciences, and also help explore those aspects that are very difficult to document and to measure, especially when we talk about more psychological, more emotional aspects, right? And in a sense can empower marginalized and underrepresented individuals, challenge the dominated narratives. Remember, we talked about Michel Foucault, about the subjugated knowledges. And it also can be valuable for informing interventions, for policies. And it's flexible because you can apply different ways to deal with autoethnography in different research areas, and also embraces our subjectivity, which very often also gets lost when we're doing research, and also can encourage us to reflect on our biases, our own prejudices, stereotypes that we have, and lead to increased awareness and deeper understanding of our role as an educator and researcher, and also at the same time can encourage, others to go into this field. So there is a great book, Autoethnography, Process, Product, and Possibility, that gives so many different tools how to work with autoethnography so that we don't fall into these limitations, and, so that to say that this research is not being condemned as being invalid. So you can use different ways of like self-observation, interviews, diary, documents, audio, video recordings, rubrics, samples, vignettes, etc. Just a little bit here, some examples. So, that it is valid and truthworthy. So this is a very quick kind of an overview. So here I have references of some of the articles we deal with. In case you might be interested, I can share the presentation later on. So this is the article that I told you that I wrote. It's called The Inside of Aging, How to Use Autoethnography and Critical Gerontology. So today it was like, a little snapshot of more or less can be expected in this paper. And and this is my contact details. So that's it. I hope that everyone is okay. It was very hot. And thank you for your attention. Perhaps we can have some talks.
Thank you very much for your talk. And we have 40 minutes for discussion. So
I can sit. Oh yeah. Now she's gonna be with me. Okay, come. Yeah.
It's not case study, just very theoretical. It's not researching, we use it for